of Greenville, Michigan. The interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Now, Ed, in our first session, you had covered your life before the war and your training and so forth, going into the Army, joining the 1st Infantry Division, Headquarters Company, 1st Battalion, 16th Infantry, if we've got all that right. And we took you through D-Day and through France and into the Battle of the Bulge at the end of 1944. But to start with, you've got a number of other pieces to add to that story to fill in before we continue. So why don't you begin with that?
Well, let's go back to Africa, because there are several stories that I overlooked, and one of them probably doesn't mean very much, but it meant a lot to us. We had a Jeep problem, and you were asking what we did with our time. Well, many times we were working on our vehicles, and the Jeep had a flat spot, and it would hesitate, and it worried us because some of the things that we were doing at night out by ourselves, we didn't want any flat spots to happen in the middle of the night. So this fellow that came across with me when we transferred was a carburetor man. So we said, let's take a carburetor apart and let's see if we can find out where that flat spot is. Of course, he did most of the work because he was the expert, but I did the help. And we checked that carburetor. We took it apart, studied every part. He'd explain to me what the circulation, everything was. Then we got to the metering rod, which gave the amount of gas to be pushed through your carburetor at a certain point. And he thought, there's our problem. And he started to work on it. And the metering rod, we would kink it a little bit. And the first time we did something worked a little bit. So he says, I think we found the problem. Now how do we go about it? Because from an engineering point of view, they must have figured that all out. But we kept fooling with it and fooling with it, maybe for 2-3 days, doing a little kink at a time till he finally got it. And we really felt it. And we turned that in. Whatever happened to it, we'll never know, but at least we figured ours out.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought that was a major engineering factor because we figured it out on our own and went ahead and did it.
Now, for the benefit of people who are not familiar with things like carburetor engines and so forth, which are now kind of a little out of date, when you talk about a flat spot, what does that mean?
It made it hesitate.
Mm-hmm.
You push the accelerator down and there would be a flat spot and then it would go.
Okay.
Well, we didn't like that idea because it could get worse and maybe not go at all.
Okay. So you could stall in a bad spot?
Well, it didn't stall. It hesitated.
Okay.
But all the Jeeps had the same problem.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know whatever happened from here on out. But
all right.
I thought that was amazing.
You got yours up and running. Sure. Now, was it hard just to maintain the vehicles out in the desert? I mean, did you have problems with dust and mud and things?
Yes, we did. Yeah, dust was terrible. It was just awful. Well, it was tough on us, too.
Yeah.
First it was hot, and then it's cold.
Mm-hmm. When
they gave us our 2 blankets to put underneath, we looked at them and said, 2 blankets here in the desert? Well, when night came, I mean, it got cool at night up there. Well, the other story, 1942, about Christmas time, we were short on food. The whole unit was falling back. We were not getting our food. And finally, the regimental came in and said, we have problems. The submarines are doing their work, and we have some real food shortages. So they turned us loose to help ourselves. So what did we do? We went to the tangerine trees. And they're little tangerines. You could get them by the bucketful. And so we ate tangerines till they were coming out our ears, and to a point because they're nice and sweet. Well, the other side of the coin was you could buy wine for about 50 cents a bottle or less. And some of the boys got into it. I probably had my share, but anyway, I managed to control it. But then they decided to have a little fun with it. They'd take some hand grenades and throw them over the fence just to make noise. Well, things didn't work out very well before higher command came down and knew what it was all about. Well, they did get it straightened out, called everybody together and gave them the complete picture of what was happening. Well, that helped that situation, but that was touch and go for a while. I mean, we came very, very close to real disruption from within, between the wine and the food shortage.
Yeah.
And that didn't work very well. Well, of course, in '43, we went to Casablanca Conference, and that was kind of interesting. Who did we see? I saw Churchill, and I saw Roosevelt, and I saw
De Gaulle?
I don't think so.
He what? Maybe. Well, let's see. Was Giraud still there, or a French commander?
De Gaulle was not there. He's a big. We did see him later on. He's a big tall guy.
Yeah,
remember?
he was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's King from the Navy.
Yep. Eisenhower. Was Eisenhower there?
Oh yeah. And it was there must have been about a dozen people, but the people in the second row were, I think, Navy and Air Force. Though we didn't recognize them, but anyway, we had to put on some kind of a demonstration for them. But I kept thinking, where's the big guy, from Russia? But he wasn't there.
Nope.
But that was kind of interesting that we were there, and not very far away, probably 50 feet. We were sitting here, and they were up there.
So they had to bring you back from Algeria to do that, because this is all the way back in Morocco.
Yeah.
Now, did you go by truck or?
Oh yes.
Flew? Oh, that's right. Oh.
Oh yes. I figured I'd put 10 or 20,000 miles in the Libyan desert. Because when they go 300 miles to 500 miles, hauling back and forth, we were all over the place. Of course, all the passes.
Yeah.
The Fade Pass, the Kasserine Pass. You're in and out, in and out. So the area of travel was ridiculous. I bet I spent 40,000 miles traveling in the Libyan desert.
Yeah. Or well, you're Algeria, Morocco over there, but
Yeah.
North Africa up there. Yeah. Now the roads were bad, weren't they?
Well.
Or did they have some paved roads?
Oh no, no, they're mostly on the desert. But
Yep.
Well, the other story is kind of interesting. When we were in Oran, because we were back, we had some time off, and so we had to find a beer garden or something. So we were downtown in Oran, I think downtown someplace, and some of the guys were going to a spot. And they said, "Come on over and join us over here." And we didn't know who they were, but they were all out to get their beer. And we entered this big place and ordered our beer, and it came. We had a couple, 3 rounds. Then all of a sudden, someone came screaming out of one of the rooms upstairs. And then the whistle came, and here come the MPs. And it was off. We were off duty. We weren't supposed to be there, and we knew that. But we didn't know where we were until afterward. And we were in the Casbah. A beautiful place. But some of the girls were for sale in there, and we didn't know that when we went in, because we just followed the gang going in to have a drink. Well, they chased us out of there in a hurry, and I took off up through the inner sanctum to get out the back door, I thought. But it was a wild place to get out of. They didn't know our language. They tried to motion to which way to get out. But anyway, we got out of there and didn't get caught. But now I understand they've already torn the place down. But anyway, but it was beautiful. It was really a nice place at one time. But that's another story. Well, I guess that about takes care of Africa. There's a lot of other things that happened there, but I don't consider them very important. we were getting ready to move into Sicily.
Mm-hmm.
But the next area we moved back, I want to move back into Sicily because I told a story about reporting back to those generals.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that story really wasn't quite true. I went back and looked up the story, and there was a day that we were counterattacked by the Germans. What was it? The
Hermann Goering Division. Yeah.
Yep. And he had a lot of tanks in front of us, and they went through us. And we were told to stay there, let them through. And that was a day that Colonel Denholm got hit, and I was with him. And that's when he sent me back to tell the tanks are coming through because they had broken through.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I considered a very important little message to tell them they were coming through, and they did get through. 3 or 4 of them got through, and of course I never did get the rest of my message out there. But when I came back, what the boys were laughing at was the fact that the couple generals had to hit the dirt, and they thought that was kind of funny because they had been accustomed to hit the dirt,
Mm-hmm.
But they thought that was really funny, and but that was the part of that story that didn't make sense as I told it the first time, and I thought that doesn't make any sense at all. But anyway, yeah.
Well, that's pretty much. I mean, you did not mention the part about Colonel Denholm being hit, but otherwise you're going. Now, do you have any idea why you had to go in person and they just didn't use a radio, or were the radios not working?
Oh boy, our communication was not very good. Not only that, but we had lost 2 regimental commanders that day.
Mm-hmm.
I think 2nd, 3rd Battalion lost a commander also, because I remember Major Driscoll came over and took our spot. And,
Mm-hmm.
Well, Denholm, I had done a lot of work with him. A lot of work. We did a lot of forward work.
Mm-hmm.
So I was right beside him. We were in a mortar attack, and I had my head to look up, and I could see those mortars coming down. They were 40 millimeters, about that
Mm-hmm.
big around. And when they came down just like rain. And I think one of them hit a stone, and I think that took out his front tooth, and I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
That there was an awful lot of excitement, and that was a bad deal with it. The second part of that fight, Captain O'Brien was in charge of Cannon Company, and he was just getting set up. And that was the day that our Squeaky got himself a tank with his 30 caliber tank.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I call them caliber 30 over there. But Cannon Company came in right in the nick of time because we were they didn't have enough infantry. They moved the tanks through, but they didn't follow up with infantry.
Mm-hmm.
And we kept those people back.
Right.
Therefore, they didn't get through. But anyway, when Captain O'Brien came in with his Cannon Company, he did a tremendous job. He knocked out I don't know how many tanks. And he also captured 3 88s. And he knew how to use them.
Oh,
So we turned them on, and they did their job.
I can believe that. Now, but he only had 37 millimeter cannon.
No, he had his 105s.
Oh, okay. So he had actual howitzers then.
Yeah.
Okay. And the howitzers had an armor-piercing round they could fire.
Well, yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
because
yes.
though that was effective. Those did work.
Yes, they were.
Okay.
But that turned that thing around.
Yeah.
Because they lost, and we had some air came in.
Mm-hmm.
We had some air support, and they came in right at this. And so that was a bad field because I thought we were going to be pushed back.
Mm-hmm.
But I had forgotten about Denholm, and I don't know why I'd forget that because I was right beside of him. But we had been in many scrapes before and never got touched.
Mm-hmm.
But because he was not a man to stay back. He's a West Pointer, and he really was a sharp man.
Mm-hmm.
I give him a lot of credit. He didn't drink, he didn't smoke, and his toughest word was damn. When he said damn, you know, he was swearing, you know. But he taught me a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because we'd be out by ourselves. He was doing map reading and he was doing all kinds of things. So he taught me a lot, but just the two of us.
Mm-hmm.
And I often wondered about why we were always by ourselves without any support. But he seemed to know where to go, because we could be picked off awful easy out there in the middle of those valleys. Because everything was either the valley or the mountains.
Well, when he was out in the field, did he wear any kind of insignia of rank? If you were looking at him from a distance, you wouldn't know he was a major or a colonel.
Yeah, he didn't want anybody to know that.
Right. So, yeah.
And no saluting.
Mm-hmm.
No saluting. But he was a leader. He did not lead from behind.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, he got caught a couple of times. And, he got caught in Africa. But we got him back again.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a very, very strange arrangement. And
Right.
so much of that was pretty foggy. Things were happening so rapidly.
Mm-hmm.
But we caught 40,000, 50,000 at the end of Mature,
Mm-hmm.
Battle of Mature. 509 and 603, those hills that were
Mm-hmm.
so important. That about takes care of the African thing, and pretty much the Sicily,
Mm-hmm.
except we didn't understand why they got away when we had them trapped.
Right.
Those things, of course, we didn't know anything about what was going on anyway, but it was a surprising good day. The fight in Sicily was not easy. Those mountains were just
Mm-hmm.
terrible, and everything is mountain. But basically, I didn't have a lot to do with my tractor, with my Jeep,
Mm-hmm.
because of the situation where you could travel, where you couldn't. But we finally pulled out of Sicily and
Right.
started to make our arrangements for the next move.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a new commander that came in the middle of Sicily. And after the war ended in Sicily, he took us back up in the mountains and showed us how to use a rifle. We had all gained our marksmanship before he came in and took over. But he wanted us, we went through about 300 rounds a piece,
Mm-hmm.
firing away, trying to prove that we knew how to use our weapons. And we kind of had a raised eyebrow about our new commander that moved in. And we were told that he was going to be a strict disciplinarian and spick and polish and all of that stuff. And so we had a kind of a squinted idea of what he was going to be like.
Mm-hmm.
It turned out very well in the end. And we made our move to move back into. So when we went back into England, I figured we had about 10,000 miles just traveling by water.
Mm-hmm.
We were better sailors sometimes than some of the sailors that were out there and they experience. But they kept us busy. We had some bad spots in training. We got caught. We weren't involved, but our outfit was slapped in sand.
Mm-hmm.
You probably heard about that, and that was a bad deal. Strange, but
Now, was the colonel you got, now are you talking about battalion commander then, or regimental commander, the new guy who came in?
regimental.
Okay. Let's see, because there was a Colonel Taylor, I think, was 16th Regiment at D-Day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Taylor. Yeah, you bet. Colonel Taylor.
Okay. But now you're in England. Did you have some additional material about life in England there before you went over for D-Day? Where do the Spam and Brussels sprouts fit?
Oh, well, of course, we were living with English families. We were down Lam Regis and way down the end of the place. But we were, and of course, a lot of that happened in our own menus because it was easy and I don't know. We ate whatever they said they fed us. The Spam was something else. That was unknown always. But there was a lot of training that went on in England, but we were there quite some time before, and it was all developing, and we knew what was going to be happening. So we often wondered why we were used so much, the 16th and the 1st Division. And we found out that Patton liked us. Eisenhower liked us. So whenever there was a special job to do, because they pulled us out for the regular, on the St. Lo breakthrough, when we broke through, they sent us a different direction. We were all over the place. And it happened until we got up in the marginal line up in that area. But, well, there's another story about in France. We were south of France, probably 10 or 15 miles. We were set up there, and at 10 o'clock every night, a plane would come over, and we had a name for it. It was Schickelgruber. And so, well, the third night we were dug in, here comes some people digging in behind us. So I had to go back and see what was going on. And the first 90 millimeter came in on an aircraft gun. And I was telling him about the 10 o'clock. He said, we know about the 10 o'clock job. But if he comes tonight and what he has been doing, if he doesn't change his speed and direction, we'll get him. And I said, yeah, I bet. And, but anyway, they dug in. They went out in front of us and buried a lot of stuff out in front. And I didn't understand it all anyway. 10 o'clock at night, here he comes, Schickelgruber. And it waited and waited and waited. All the way out, and boy, oh boy, 4 of them went off all at the same time. And they got him. So I went back the next day. And I said, well, you did it. And they were happy as a lark. Because that's the first time that they've been in line. And they got their target the first time.
Okay, so this was in Normandy.
Yes.
Yeah, because you're just kind of not moving for a little bit there.
Well, this was it was south of France.
Well, you weren't in the south of France. The south of France is down by the Mediterranean. But you were south of...
North of France. Oh.
Yeah, right. Northern France.
Yeah, northern France.
Right.
I said southern France. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, my.
Okay. Now, was that in Normandy, or was that later on after the breakout?
Well, it was after... It was before the breakout.
Okay, yes, well, yeah. Because that's when the Germans were doing things like that. Other people have reported things like that.
Yeah.
A washing machine Charlie or something else coming over. Yeah.
Well, I said, the guy said, where did you get that name? I said, well, that's Hitler's name. They said, no, you're kidding. I said, no, it's not. I said, Hitler's father's name. His father changed his name. And so we took the Schickelgruber name for the airplane. But that was interesting, I thought, because it gave us a little better feeling that we were getting some extra support. Because we kept waiting, where's that 90 millimeter to off that 88? Something got to offset that 88.
Yeah.
It just ran our whole program. That 88 decided what we could do and couldn't do.
And it took the Americans a long time to start using the 90 millimeter cannon for ground fire.
Oh, my.
They had it. They just took a long time to use it.
You know, these things are never figure out. Oh, there's a lot of things to figure out. But I have figured out a lot of them since because I've come back and read about it.
Right.
But it's a massive program when you have 100,000 people online on each side, and a couple of $100,000 Russians online, it's hard to conceive the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And we had all kinds of help, but we had a lot of new people coming in that never had any experience.
Right.
Some of our replacements here, we had a lot of them. We were afraid of them because they made mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Commanders would come down and say, "Well, you teach them, and that's what your job is. You teach them to do what's right." Yeah. You had all you do to control yourself and find a spot for cover. And
now, did you have many replacements in the headquarters company?
no,
I didn't think so. So you didn't have to do a lot of that directly yourself.
no, but we had the line companies were just awful.
Yep.
And we lost our officers there. Just unbelievable. So, I guess we jumped from different areas of moving through. The St. Lo thing was really shocking, and we came within a half a mile of that last bomb, and we started 2.5 miles back
Mm-hmm.
when they dropped those bombs, and we lost that general.
Mm-hmm.
We also lost another general. What was his name? Can't think of it right now. We lost 2 generals. But the breakout was costly. And we lost, I think, a big regiment, almost a regiment of men, by dropping short. And, but things get a little fuzzy because we were so, I guess we were chasing Patton after the breakthrough. It seemed like somebody went to the left and we went off to our side, and we were here and there all over the place. But eventually we get pulled back into what? We had a big fight at the Dragon's Teeth.
Okay, so at the Siegfried line?
The Siegfried line on the end of it. Seemed like we were on the end of it somewhere.
Well, the Hurtgen Forest area was up on one end of it, near Aachen.
Oh, yeah.
But did you get into fighting farther south along the Siegfried line first and then move, or did you?
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
But we didn't have the problems. We got through them pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
But when we came back and went another direction, we ran into something. We had a big fight for about 4 days, and it was just red hot. I mean, the outfits were. Well, we had a desperate call for water. Water first and ammunition second. Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
So I was given a job to take 3 half-tracks forward. And so we got all loaded up, started out, everybody was behind, and got to our spot finally because it was really bad going. And the 2 regimental commanders were there for their water, and then the ammunition and replacements. And but when I went into their headquarters, they were dug in, and there was probably 6 telephones, all ringing at once. And of course, things were really happening. We went toe-to-toe there for about 3 days and 3 nights. And they were desperate. And he was swearing, Colonel Gibbs. And there was another one named Horner. They were a different regiment, but we were covering both of them.
Mm-hmm.
What was he had a special name for himself. His name was Batshit Horner. That was his name. Everybody called him that.
Mm-hmm.
He said, if I've got 32 men on A Company, he said, I'll be very fortunate. Down to 32 men, and we had been battling back and forth and back and forth. And come to find out, after it was all over with, we were told that we took out 3 divisions, they took out 1.
Mm-hmm.
Ours.
Yep.
Because we were really beat up. But that wasn't the first time that we were beat up, because after Normandy we were a piece of mess. I mean, our companies were all riddled. I think we figured we lost about 30 or 35% of the total on the invasion. But this was another big fight up here, and seems to me we went from there to the Roar River.
Mm-hmm.
Aachen, of course, in between.
Yeah.
Was Aachen and Bonn. Mm-hmm. Oh, I remember Bonn. Leica. Camera Company. And did you see the rear echelon get forward in a hurry to take over that?
Okay. But Bonn, that's along the Rhine, isn't it?
Yep.
Okay, so you weren't there yet. That would be in 45 when you got that far. Because that's after the Bulge and so forth.
Oh, yeah.
Now, you had a couple of things you had mentioned before that didn't make it on camera. You talked about being in France, maybe going past Paris or something, and meeting a fellow who spoke English, and he had something to share with you?
Yeah.
Can you tell that story?
I thought I already didn't I tell
You
it?
told it to me, but not on camera.
Oh. Well, again, we were on those breakouts, and we didn't know where we were going, and we'd been doing about 50 or 50 fast as fast as the track would go, traveling just breakneck speed, because you really have to fight that mammoth.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden we stopped, and I said, well, where are we? Like, people were around and didn't realize that we were in outskirts of Paris. Someone jumped on the side of the track, and I'm all buttoned up. And he spoke English. And so I grabbed my gun and I held it when I opened up. And he looked at that gun and oh, I'm from Chicago, he said. And I said, what are you doing here? I was irritated because I didn't know who he was. He had that bottle in his hand.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I want to share this drink with you. And I said, I bet you do. And he said, and I see it had dirt on it. He said, I'll show you how to drink. And I said, that'll be interesting. He said, you drink to the thumb. He handed me the bottle, and it was cowards because they had that rugged edge of the outside.
Mm-hmm.
So I put my thumb a little bit further down. Took one long drink, and he had to take the first drink. He took the first drink, and I took my first drink, plus the second.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, I went a little bit below the thumb. He says, that's great. And he started to tell me I'm from Chicago. I said, yeah, what are you doing here? He said, I got caught. I couldn't get back. Well, then we had to move. But anyway, that was, he was telling me that he buried the bottle prior to the invasion. This was the first time he'd seen an American, and he wanted to share that bottle.
Okay. Now, did you go through Paris when you advanced? You went around it.
Okay. Around it. Someone else did, though. Somebody marched through. I don't remember.
Yeah, 4th Division went through.
No, because we went this way. They went there where they were.
Mm-hmm.
But again, we were on the run again. Where we went, I'm not sure, because it just seemed like most of the stories I read, the divisions were dug in for quite some time, but we were never dug in very much.
There's after the breakout, there's a month or so where everybody's moving, and you might change almost every day where you were.
Oh yeah.
And then once we got up against the Siegfried line, then things slowed down some. But they moved you around. they didn't leave you in one part of the front with the same army. They moved you around.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you had another story that you mentioned to me off camera, and that was your Christmas dinner in 1944, which was in Belgium. I think. There were some civilians who were...
Oh, yes.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
That'd be Luxembourg.
Okay.
Luxembourg, I think. We were up traveling with the track, and there was a young Anderson was with me. Very seldom I had anybody with me, but Anderson was with me that day, and we stopped by a house, I guess it was called. It was kind of dug into the side of a bank, and a couple old ladies came out, motioned us to come over. We went over, and we couldn't speak their language, but it was Christmas time, and we finally got it down, and they wanted us to come to have it done. Well, we learned that,
Mm-hmm.
and they gave us all time to be there and the whole work. So,
Mm-hmm.
so I went back and got permission from the old sarge, and he says, "Am I invited?" I said, "No, you're not." He said, "That's not fair." I said, "I know it isn't, but But anyway, we went up there, and they had their things all set up. It was really, really quite nice, and they had the dinner ready, and it was chicken and trimmings. And right in the middle of it, here come a A1, B1, or one of those
A V1, the buzz bomb?
buzz bombs.
Mm-hmm.
And they, of course, they listened. They knew it. And I said, "It's gone. It went down somewhere else." So we had our dinner. I made sure they had their prayer. We had our dinner. They wanted to know if it was good. And we found it was wonderful. And then they explained to us that they had to go down the basement for something, and it was some wine, but it was special. They drank wine only on Christmas time, and we understood that.
Mm-hmm.
So we had our wine, and, but that was right up in the middle of the whole thing,
Mm-hmm.
except they had a good spot where their place was. And then we should have gotten their names and addresses, but you don't think about anything
Right.
like that. But I think it was Luxembourg.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think your division was north of Luxembourg at that point. You were on the north side of the Bulge, and Luxembourg was south. So you're probably in Belgium at that point.
Oh, you talk about, I don't know.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know north or south, except I know where the Germans were.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's pretty much the same kind of people. They're still probably speaking French in that area, and some spoke German, but or Flemish, I suppose. But
I'm not so sure it wasn't Flemish.
if it was Flemish, you're probably in Belgium. But that makes sense just geographically. But anyway, it's period of the Battle of the Bulge. You're a little bit behind the lines, but not very far. But it also makes sense with the V1s because they fired buzz bombs at Liège, and Liège was north of where you were. So you'd have hear them going past you in that direction.
Yeah. And I was on guard duty someplace over there. And the V2s were being used, but we didn't know what they were. They were being launched at Frankfurt.
Mm.
And
At Antwerp, maybe? Or we launched from Frankfurt? Okay, yeah.
I could see that thing go up, and they called the
Mm-hmm.
corporal of the guard, and they said there's something going on further way off in the. So, well, a week later, Tom came back. It was the V2s were being launched,
Mm-hmm.
which was fairly new then.
Yeah.
But this was another incident that what was happening. But the Germans were good at pulling off new things all the time. It kept you on edge. Well, during this, there was some big fighting in here. But But after the big fight, then things let up for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the roar.
Yep.
In the mud. Because my track didn't work very well. Boy, it was a mess in there. What did we go from the roar to the Remagen Bridge?
That's quite possible.
Because all of a sudden we had an alert, and the alert was short. Usually they give you a day or two, but no, this was a short alert. Be ready to move, and we took off. Again, as fast as that thing would go. And we came to this funny looking bridge, and I thought, Remagen didn't mean a thing to me, just a bridge. And I thought, boy, we're lucky we're going to get across that river, that Rhine River, because I knew that was a big. So we got across it. And,
Were you crossing the original rail bridge, or were you on a pontoon bridge?
no, sir, that was the good old rail bridge.
Okay. And what condition was it in when you were crossing it?
Well, I had to be careful where I was driving, because it wasn't a very good pattern underneath. All I wanted was to get on the other side,
Mm-hmm.
because I could see it was a mess. But we crossed. I'm guessing it was noon. We crossed, and I came back on the backside down the Rhine River,
Mm-hmm.
and we sat there for about 20 minutes. We sat there for more than 20 minutes. In fact, we sat there for an hour or two until I saw a bridge go down. I heard a big kabang. I looked over there, and all I could see was 2 6x6s in the middle of the bridge falling in.
Oh.
And the whole thing was collapsed. So I thought, boy, oh boy, now what?
By the time the original bridge collapsed, there was one or more pontoon bridges down below. Yeah.
Yes, there were.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you weren't stuck.
But I went back at one time and I saw that pontoon bridge.
Mm-hmm.
It was well done. I didn't realize that, because I could have put my track across it with no problem.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't. I often wondered about that. That track was heavy, but if a tank can go across it,
Mm-hmm.
But there again, we took off. We went a flying again after that.
Did you drive at all on the autobahns?
No.
You didn't get on the big highways?
No.
Okay.
I don't think it would run on it anyway. That was too good. The highway would be too good for that. But that was a beast. Where we went from there. Of course, it seemed like I can't think of anything in particular until we got moved back into the mountains again. With the March Mountains, and the roadways there were not very good either. Some more mountains, and what was it? During this time, we were catching a lot of Germans.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, when we got into the March Mountains, we were getting. Of course, we've left out the Bulge. We've left out a lot of stuff.
Well, we talked about the Bulge and so forth last time, so we didn't really talk about things that happened in 45. So sort of after the Bulge, but you do some fighting along the Rhine. You get into Bonn, where the guys try to get their Leica cameras, and then you get across at Remagen, and then go inland. Now, and then you went probably south down into the mountains, or just, kind of toward Austria, or just east?
Czechoslovakia.
Czechoslovakia, so kind of south and east. Yeah. All right. Now, were the Germans still fighting back at that point?
Oh boy. I tell you, they did not give up. They fought right to the very end, and they fought well for what they had. They did very well, right up to the very end. There was a big area that we probably overlooked was Normandy.
Mm-hmm.
That was a bad deal when they shot all our guys.
Mm-hmm.
And we heard about that, and that made us really, really angry. Somewhere in between there, we got into Nuremberg,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where I got Hitler's head. That was right after Normandy, if I remember correctly. It was somewhere in there.
It's that bronze head or whatever that you got in the clip. Not Hitler's real head, but yeah. Just clarify that one.
But it's fairly well done.
Mm-hmm.
And I also got the first flag off from
Was this the SS headquarters or?
Yes, this was, but I can't think of the name of the area where all the flags were.
I don't remember.
Where they have all the speeches, 110,000 people.
Okay, so it was Nuremberg. That would have been like an Olympics, a big stadium there.
The stadium.
Yeah.
I have the flag on the first stop. It's out in the back room.
Mm-hmm.
Did I show it to you?
Yes.
It's just like it came.
Mm-hmm.
The ropes and everything the way it was. All the way around that stadium, those big flags. I thought that was a real deal that I got that flag off from that place.
Now, by this time, are you now seeing a lot of German prisoners? Are some of them starting to surrender?
Oh my. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. I didn't have rank, but the old sergeant told me what to do. He said, find somebody in rank and line them up.
Mm-hmm.
Send them that way. We could take care of them.
Right. Now, what did the prisoners look like?
They looked like soldiers.
Okay.
Most of them.
But they looked like they were about your age, or younger, or older, or?
Oh, they went two extremes, very old to very young.
Mm-hmm.
The very young we were very careful about. The SS, you'd never take your eyes off an SS.
Mm-hmm.
Because they were desperate, those guys. And they were mean. They were mean soldiers. Oh, we caught them by the hundreds and hundreds from when? After the breakout and the gap. What's it called?
Falaise, yeah.
Oh, we caught hundreds of them.
Mm-hmm.
Every night to catch a couple dozen it was, because they were trapped.
Right.
And also we were having some problems with civilians that were moving back in front of the Russians. They don't want the Russians.
Okay, so when you're going through Germany, there are German civilians who were heading west toward you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And they gave us problems on the highway, Everybody wants to be on that highway.
Mm-hmm.
And especially the women. Oh, they were desperate. They were scared to death of those Russians. That was crazy. It was to put up with your own problems. You had civilian problems. I hauled civilians with my track. And if you can imagine older people crawling up on that track and getting in,
Mm-hmm.
but they found a way to do it. And I'd haul them back. And track after track load of people. And like I say, they used to be for about everything. Well, I should come back to Denholm, because he left us in Sicily and led the 36th Division into Italy. And while we were landing or establishing a beachhead, after we had about the fourth day, here come the general. He had in general,
Mm-hmm.
and wanted to see how things were. And I was called forward to meet him because
Mhm.
I had been driving for him. But I didn't know who was there. The old sergeant didn't tell me it was the general that was coming back. He said, "You're wanted in such and such a place." So I walked in. "Geez, here's the general is in." I said, "Sir," he says, "I hear you got yourself a medal." I said, "Yeah, I guess so." But anyway, I said, "What was it like to take different troops inland?" He says, "It was different." That's about all he would say.
Mhm.
It was different. And I said, "Are you back with us?" And he laughed. He says, "I flew over here to see how you're doing."
Mm-hmm.
And right after that, the old sergeant sent me out another commission. And I reported where he told me to. And we were getting our medals. And here was Eisenhower and I don't know how many, all kinds of
Mhm.
rank. But there was this row and this row, and I was the third row. Well, these are all the special people getting all this top ranking, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Then the next one, and I guess the Silver Stars were next and whatever, but
Mhm.
we were kind of lined up, not knowing that I even had the thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm stunned by what's happening. And I said, don't remember, Colonel? I think he was a colonel. I said, sir? I said, what? What is this medal? And he looked at me and he said, Sonny, this is a Silver Star. You should be proud of it. Thank you, sir. I didn't even know what I was getting. You know, that's not fair. The next guy got his right next to me, and I said, "Do you know what was happening?" He said, "Oh yeah, they told me what I had won."
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Well, that's fine."
So your sergeant just didn't tell you?
He didn't tell me. Well, of course, he and I were the ones that were on that landing craft.
Mm-hmm.
But he was quite a man of it. But I said to him, you know, you could tell me a few things ahead of time, but felt stupid walking into that tent and hear the general stood there. Oh my goodness sake, where? But he was such a wonderful soldier. We had a lot of good leaders.
Mm-hmm.
Another general was wonderful. Was Cliff Andrews, General Andrews. I worked with him in Africa in his artillery.
Mm-hmm.
He was not a young man. He was World War I. But he was like a grandpa. He treated you like he was your son, you know.
Mm-hmm.
We went out on these different recons, and just a wonderful man. I met a lot of generals, really. Of course, being at headquarters companies, they were around. Who else I met there?
Well, you would have met Hubner probably, because he was in between
Yeah.
Terry Allen and Andrus to command the division.
He wasn't the friendliest for the enlisted man.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of looked down his nose at. But we had, you know, Terry Allen was a soldier's general. He didn't believe in spit and polish and all that stuff. But then Hubner was a good man also. He turned out to be a real good soldier.
Now, where were you when the war ended?
Hertz.
Okay.
Cheb, Yugoslavia.
Mm-hmm. Or Czechoslovakia.
Czechoslovakia.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, how did the people in Czechoslovakia react when you showed up?
It's interesting. Not too sure.
Mm-hmm.
I just did not trust them. There was something different about them. I don't know what it was. But there's a lot of mountains in that darn area. roads were not very good. But there was, well, we did capture a couple generals in the area. Of course, we were getting all kinds of people giving up.
Mm-hmm.
But when they were backing up, they did not run. You had to fight for every inch you got. I mean, like I say, that 88 just controlled everything. But at the end of the war, after moving a lot, the word came down that it was over. And the Sarge came around and I said, no, I don't believe it. So, but he said, I've told you, okay. That was 8 o'clock or something. By 10 o'clock he came back again and said, yeah, it's all over. So the surprise that I had was after it had been told that the war was over, there wasn't a sound. In our area, there was not a sound. We just were stunned that it was finally over. But I thought that was very unusual that they wouldn't celebrate like you ordinarily would think about.
Now, how long did you stay there?
Not long. We had to go clean up a air base.
Okay.
We had to clean it up. Some of the old timers were called in and said, well, we're getting you out of here as quickly as possible. And I said, we were asking for a pass to go up, we call it the rat's nest. We wanted to go up and see the rat's nest. No, you aren't going any place. So I don't know, 4 or 5, 6 days. Within a week, we were on our way.
Okay. Now, did you see the Russians when you got into Czechoslovakia? Did you meet them at all?
We met them at Potsdam, which was long before that. Yeah, no, we're back before.
Well, Potsdam's after the surrender, because that's the conference that goes on in the summer, like in June or whatever. The Germans surrender in early May, and you'd gotten into Czechoslovakia at that point. And then, is that where you left from, or did you move someplace else before you went home? So did you go to Potsdam, for instance, or you just heard about that? Okay. Because I was just asking if you yourself had seen any Russian troops.
We did at one place, but I don't know where it was because I had a drink with one of them.
Okay.
And they drink vodka like you drink water. And I'll tell you, those Russian soldiers are a tough-looking bunch.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he wanted my canteen, and he filled that thing half full of vodka. Well, you know what a canteen cup is.
Mm-hmm.
At school, and he drank the whole thing, I had maybe half of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was strong. Of course, I had been drinking other stuff that was just as strong, but well, I thought, boy, oh boy, you guys can handle a whole cupful of that at a time. But they were a mean bunch. What we saw, they did some things they had some POWs there that they were showing off, and they did some things to those POWs that I didn't approve of. After all, if you're caught, that's your war's over.
Mm-hmm.
But I wasn't impressed with them.
Now, did you, while you were still going through Germany, did you see any of the displaced persons?
Yeah, we did. A lot of them. I can't tell you where, but we came across a couple of camps, and they made us go through them.
Mm-hmm.
That was Eisenhower. You go through them and you look at them.
Yeah, those were the concentration camps. because the displaced persons are the ones that the Germans just moved around and used for
Oh,
slave labor, and you had them too,
Yeah.
and they had to get home somehow.
And there was just thousands and thousands and thousands of them. There were so many people. And all the civilians that were moving around, it was a mess
Mm-hmm.
to try to move. You get scrambled but toward the end. But I think they shoved us from where we were. I think we ended up at Le Havre.
Mm-hmm.
And that trip home was not very pleasant, I'll tell you. We were on a Liberty ship, and I thought, that's the wrong name for that ship. It's not a Liberty ship. That's not even going to get us home. But the move from Cheb to Le Havre is almost a blank. We just seemed like we were just moving. A long ways.
Did you do it all on trucks, or did they eventually get you on a train?
We were partially on train, but I really don't recall. Well, except that we were packed and everything they had was in our bag, and we were, well, you know, moved like a bunch of cattle.
Yep.
What it amounted to.
All right. Well, this tape is.
Con? Is that the right name?
Well, the Bulge doesn't mean Colin's back in Normandy.
No, that's not the way. That's not the one.
Well,
Saint Vit,
yes, that would be
Malmedy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, somewhere in between there, I'm not
Mhm.
sure where we were. But at St. Vit, we had pushed out too far,
Mm-hmm.
and we got hit by our own artillery. I mean, that was an experience.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is brutal. You had to get between there, and so the stuff could come around, you know. Only a couple, 3 rounds, and they found out that we were out there.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a bad one.
Yep.
Then they moved us back into position. And if I remember correctly, we took they broke through some place with our 1st Division,
Mm-hmm.
but not very far. But I know that where we moved in, that we were lined up, never lined up like that before. That we started out with our own line of defense, and then the mortars, the 16 and the 90s and the 3-pointers, and the cannon company, and then the 105s, and the 155s, the long toms, and the corps artillery,
Mm-hmm.
all lined up, waiting for and they hit. And the airplanes were coming in at the same time. What a mess that was. But that stopped them. They did not penetrate our lines after
Yeah.
that.
I mean, one place where the 1st Division did that was called Elsenborn Ridge. And that was a highly organized defense. 1st Division was there.
Yep.
In the Bulge, that area.
Yep. Oh, yeah, that's the name for it.
Yeah, and that's where the Germans thought they were going to break through.
Yeah. See, the place where we were supposed to have our Christmas. Well, I didn't realize that was such a key place.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, that was an ammunition dump there that we didn't realize.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was one of their places they were trying to break through. But I remember when we tried to get forward to plug that hole, God, the highway was just jammed full. And it was our people
Mm-hmm.
trying to get back.
Right.
And we had a big fight out in front. 2 cars fighting it out. Who has the right of way?
Mm-hmm.
That was crazy. He made him leave the highway, drive off the ditch. Where you're not active, you get out of our way.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was really funny. Yeah.
Right.
Those two guys arguing who had the right of way, who had the rank.
All right. So that was again sort of just we just went back to the Battle of the Bulge there for a little bit. Now, in your main story, we've gotten you as far as loading onto a Liberty ship at Le Havre for the trip home. So what happens once you're on the boat?
Not much. I was sweating out that boat right after coming over on the Queen Mary. But it didn't bother me, I never got seasick, but I was afraid the thing wasn't going to make it. I thought, boy, oh boy, here we are. I've got it this far. This thing not going to make it. Then we ran into a storm, and it was, well, I don't know. It seemed like we were out there 4 or 5 days. More than that, we were more than we were 7, 8 days getting home.
Mm-hmm.
I thought we went over in 4 days, but it was 5 or 6 days with the Queen Mary.
Mm-hmm. Probably with the zigzagging, it'd be 5 or 6.
Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness! Yeah, I think we were maybe 2 weeks getting home.
Yeah, that's possible if you hit a bad storm. Liberty ships were slow.
Well, I don't think they were very well made either. They made funny noises, and I thought, this ain't going to collapse. But anyway, we finally made it. We all had to try to straighten up, correct our language. Cost us $0.25 for every bad word we used, and we were going to be civilians again, and didn't know how to do it. But I remember pulling into the port. And the Statue of Liberty was a welcome sight.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you the feeling that you receive seeing that lady with waving her hands, welcome home.
And what sort of reception was there for you when you got into New York?
They had a big steak dinner for us that night. We all got sick.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, did I get sick? Oh, God, that was awful. Well, we hadn't had anything like that in just months.
Mm-hmm.
That steak was wonderful, but it was at a big warehouse, and our tables were all lined up here, and then up there in the far end, all stuff being sent to Russia. Horse meat, great big sign,
Mm-hmm.
horse meat. I thought, well, maybe just as good as that steak, is it? But anyway, they tried to do what they could for us, and but we were pretty well in shock anyway. It didn't make much difference one way or the other. So where'd we go from there?
Did they send you someplace to a camp around New York first, and then ship you out, or just let you go home?
No. We went to Fort Sheridan.
Okay.
To be checked out, and of course, every time you went through one of those cubby holes, oh, you have too many points. Yeah, don't tell me about it.
Mm-hmm.
So we got checked out. What happened after that? I was sent to Fort Sheridan. Oh, yeah. We went to Fort Sheridan, and I had an ulcerated tooth, a great big tooth. Went into the hospital there. And, who did I run into? You want to tell your story?
Well, we'll get her side of it in a moment here, in her own interview. What's your side of it?
Okay, we pulled it in there. Of course, I got pulled up in the big ward, a whole bunch of guys, all of them beat up. And got my, well, that was supposed to be a place to acclimatize, I guess, but I was not very pleasant at that point. I didn't like the idea of being sent there. And so when the first girls came in, I said, just leave me alone, you know. That didn't work very well. And so the next rank came up, and the next rank came up, and finally a lieutenant or captain or somebody from overseas came in, wanted to know why I was being ornery, and I said, I was just made that way. But anyway, they got me settled down and got my teeth taken care of. In the meantime, I had run into these girls that kept coming to me. But one came, every time she'd come, it'd be the same one. So I asked her why she was the one that always came back. And you know what she said to me? She said, I like you. Anyway, I didn't get discharged either. I got medical discharge. And I had to spend some time in a hospital. And 3-4 months.
Your story.
I don't remember. As time as it were.
Mm-hmm.
Because everything is so new. I didn't know anything, anybody. Music was brand new. And everything was new. How people were. The adjustment from going from the front line to the front bed was a little much.
Mm-hmm.
I probably weighed about 128 pounds, soaking wet, but beat up. Absolutely, the whole bunch of us were just beat up. Of course, when you have the letdown, I think it affected you more, realizing that you didn't have to have all that pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And you're kind of in an adjustment period, and I think you're in an adjustment period a long time after that. Just moving from 3 or 4 years of the same old, and now you're going through civilians, or not civilians, but people that were not in the service overseas taking care of you, and it didn't go over very well.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing I look at the ribbons to see if there'd been any overseas ribbons that they're talking to. The one person that came in, I don't know, major or captain, he was really a nice guy. He really put it on the line. Yeah, I struck up with him right off the bat. He made a lot of sense, and I said, well, maybe I'm not making very much sense. And he says, oh yes you are. Is this a normal reaction? He said, as people that on the other side of the fence don't understand. I said, oh, I thought it was my fault. Well, anyway, that took care of that pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
So someone else did realize what it was all about.
Because this is the period before they talk about things like PTSD and all the rest of that, and they didn't really have much they could do for soldiers when they came back to help them readjust. But you had to spend a couple of months in a hospital before you could go anywhere?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Except I was in a hospital on, was it VE Day?
Well, maybe VJ Day.
VJ Day, yeah. I can't remember who was in charge of the ward, but anyway, I said, I'm going out tonight. He says, no. I said, I'm going out tonight. So I put my clothes on behind everybody's back, put my cloak on over the top of my clothes, and I knew where the rear entrance was. I dropped off those clothes, slipped out the back door, and I went downtown.
Mm-hmm.
And of course I had all my ribbons on. So you can imagine I did not buy a drink that night. In fact, they were coming to me right and left, and I was doing a pretty good job of putting them away.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, about 1 o'clock in the morning, I started back, climbed up the hill, and there's the old boy that I think he saw me leave too. But anyway, he said, "You need some help," and I said, "No, I don't need any help." He said, but anyway, he got me back in bed.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I held it all together. I had been drinking quite a bit. In fact, we drank a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the guys that could would. That was, I guess, a method of trying to offset what was going on. And,
Mm-hmm.
so I helped celebrate that day. But anyway, I started to gain weight. My God, I gained, 30 pounds in 30 days? And I ate Milky Ways by the carton. We were short on sugar. I just couldn't get enough sugar. Bought a whole bunch of Milky Ways. And in the meantime, I'd quit smoking. And, that story will come in later on. Anyway. So the candy bar again was the substitute
Mm-hmm.
for the cigarette. On the way home, and this is jumping stories, but on the way home on this rattle trap, there was a priest stood there watching the storm, and I said, "Well, I'm going to quit smoking." He said, "Yeah, I'll bet you are." He bet me, he gave me his name and address. I wanted to write to him in 6 months that I had really quit smoking. And he said, "What makes you think you quit smoking?" I said, "Well, it's mind over matter. You make up your mind to do it, you'll do it." He said, "It's not that simple." Okay. But that was the challenge. And I never smoked one after that.
Mm-hmm.
I never smoked a one after that. But the whole area of adjustment is from here on in. I mean, right up till the 4 years of back to school. 4 years before, I made up my mind to go back to school.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't have the faintest idea that I was capable of doing it. Until somebody in Grand Rapids put me through some tests down there and said, "You can do it."
So when did you come back to Grand Rapids?
Came back to Greenville.
Greenville, yeah.
It was the person in Grand Rapids that was doing the interviewing of
Mm-hmm.
with soldiers. Of course, while we were still in the hospital, the lady that met me came out to see me in the hospital on a regular basis. First thing you know, we decided maybe we were going to stay together for a while. But anyway, so the area from there on is quite different. We did. Well, we were together about 4 months. Back and forth, she'd come to visit,
Mm-hmm.
and I was on rehab. And finally decided to get married, but didn't even tell her folks until the last minute that we're going to get married in Fort Sheridan. So, but her story should be in the middle here somewhere.
Well, actually, I kind of want to give her own separate interview rather than try to jump back and forth, because this is kind of your story. In your case, we can have her fill in some more of that, but in your case, basically, but when did you come home to Greenville? Was that late in 45 or was it 46? Or? Okay.
a year or two.
But then, but by the time you came back to Michigan, you were already married?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then once you got back to Michigan, what did you do?
I went to work with my father.
Mm-hmm.
He was a carpenter. They had moved to town off the farm. Of course, when I gave you the story about my father, when he went on the farm, he also was a Bell telephone man at the time. I forgot to tell you that again, because that was the difference between making it and not making it during the Depression. That little extra job,
Right.
just enough to make a difference. And of course, his dad was a carpenter, and his dad had been a carpenter from Denmark. They were all carpenters. So when we came back here, we picked up. At that time, paper hanging was a big deal. So I pitched in to start do all the pasting for him. Well, we worked at that, and some odd jobs, whatever, in the building business. But I was kind of wandering around, and in the meantime, I joined the VFW over here and was working real hard with the vets. And I went out and picked up about 40 extra members. We'd get in here and get together and join together on this thing. And we spent a lot of time with the VFW at the time. And we finally bought our first little house. I had sent some money home, but I had one from poker. So I did have some extra money to put down. So our first house was $6,000. So we worked at that and basically kind of floating around knowing what to do or what not to do. Till finally someone said there's a counselor in Grand Rapids that works with vets. So I made an appointment, went down to see him. We went together, went through a whole battery of tests. I think more than a day, if I remember right. And told me to come back in 2 weeks to hear the readout. And I said, well, what's the story? He said, well, he said, you're capable of going to college. And he rattled off about 4 or 5 colleges that I could choose. So then I chose Ferris.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the next 3 or 4 years was as college, and so we changed my major a couple, 3 times, and then ended up on something brand new. I had a major in accounting and history. History very well, and at the end of the 4th year or 3rd year, I went through it in 3 years because I went to summer school. At the end of the period, somebody called in and said, "You're up for an interview with something different." And I said, "What's the difference?" "Well, there's a guy down here from education. He wants to hire a principal." And I said, "Ooh, wait a minute. I didn't think it worked that way." Well, anyway, we had the interview, and he told me about the little school he belonged to, and so I went with it.
And where was the school?
Yeah.
Where was the school?
Oh, yeah, Maple City, up by Traverse City.
Mm-hmm.
He was superintendent. He was hiring. So we went to work, and I had my commercial major. I teaching typing and shorthand, and eventually we got into consolidation. So we worked for 3 or 4 years consolidating all 3 schools up there into one, which was a real big deal. Convincing people to give up their little school.
Mm-hmm.
So from there, after we had consolidated, we had to agree as a group that each school had its own administration, that somebody was not going to make it. So I started to look around, and I put my name into U of M. No, it must have been Ferris. I had a chance to go with another school, and they had never had a principal before. The superintendent had been both.
Mm-hmm.
So I went and interviewed there, and I got my first job then at Roscommon. So I was at Roscommon for 19 years, and then I went to Bel Air for 5 or 6 years, and then back to Greenville when my parents, my father died. I don't remember all the stuff in between, but something brought us back to Greenville, and we started to work here. I got over to college for a couple of years, community college.
Mm-hmm.
Then something else came along. They wanted someone to head up the Council on Aging program. So I put in for that, and I got it, and I organized the first one here. They gave me a whole pot of money to use, which was, now looking at it, it's really quite silly. I had a pretty good chunk of money to work with. But anyway, went ahead and organized it all, put it together for 8, 9 years or something. Finally, well, the system gets crazy. Then I went from that into insurance. I sold insurance for a while and decided to start my own. So I organized my own insurance company, mid-Michigan. I've got some pencils around here someplace, Michigan. Well, I even got some stirring sticks for your cocktails. She used to give the people. But anyway, we was in insurance for a long time. What did I do? I ended up working with my son Bill back in the building again. He was a contractor. I worked with Bill for 10 years? I was 83. Yeah. We built a house when I was 83. It was our minister's house. And we were way up in the front, because I heard him yell at me. He was down in the board. What are you doing up there? And I said, well, we're building a house here. It didn't bother me to get up high anyway. So eventually, we've been through all the other materials. The one school, they had me as a principal. They also had me Chamber of Commerce, the head of the Chamber of Commerce, and I said to the school board, that shouldn't be, because divergent things. They'd call you out of school for everything. Oh no, they wanted me in there, so I belonged to the Rotarians and all the other organizations wherever you moved to. But anyway, you did what was, and it started to pull together. I figured I was going to help kids. So we are pretty much back to beginning. Sometimes you get too old to do anything. In fact, yesterday, the day before, I probably wouldn't have made it the day before. I was not feeling good at all. But and this bothers me a little bit. To go back and pull all this stuff forward again, because you don't remember a lot of details that once you leave, I'll think of a dozen things that should have been said.
But in the meantime, you've given us 3.5 hours of material. So while you're not a record, you're pretty close. And a lot of stuff that will be useful to people in ways you haven't even thought of yet. And so I think I'd like to just close out the session here by thanking you for taking the time to tell your story to me.
Well, I'm sure I'm not very good.